What's going on, my beautiful people of the world? It's the Mad Hatter logging back in, reporting live from the abyss. And I want to talk about a popular topic right now, which is how these presidents of these historically black colleges and how they keep bringing in these far-right conservatives to give speeches during the commencement ceremonies. So, in a previous video, I talked about Betsy Devos, the Education Secretary, and how she went down to Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona, Florida, another historically black college, to give a speech. And she was met by a lot of boos. And a lot of that is because of her perception and her misunderstanding of why black colleges were there to begin with. And then you're going to bring somebody to talk about black colleges? Like, what a slap in the face, right? So now you have John Cornyn, who has, had to rescind his commencement speech because of a petition started by a student, Rebecca Trevino, at Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas, and he had to pull back because they were afraid that, officials were afraid that the same thing would happen, and they should be, because this is supposed to be about the students. If the students don't want to hear from somebody, they shouldn't have to hear from somebody. I don't care if you're going to call this a snowflake or a safe space. It's not about being a safe space. It's about standing up sometimes for what you believe in and saying, no, we're not going to allow these people who time and time again vote to systematically, make sure that we are kept down in a lower state. So in her petition, and Rebecca Trevino's petition, she talks about voter ID laws, which this is my input. Voter ID laws are bullshit, because really what it does is it kind of plays off of the whole poll tax, which is one of the ways that the people in the South, white people in the South, kept black people from voting. They said that, you either had to pay a tax at the poll, or, you had to take a test, or you had to own property. It was a way to keep us from voting. Now, these voter ID laws today are only in place because, first off, all the fraud comes from GOP people anyway, people who vote GOP. Really, what these voter ID laws are there for is to make it more difficult for people of color and people who are a part of marginalized groups, is to keep them from voting, because when they don't vote, time and time again, Republicans win. This is why Donald Trump won, is because it was one of the lowest voter turnouts in the last 70 years. That's a big reason why Donald Trump won. She also talked about his stance against sanctuary cities and states. Now, from the looks of it, Rebecca Trevino sounds like somebody who probably either of mixed race or maybe even Latino background or Afro-Latino. But whatever it is, she wants to stand in solidarity with her Latino brothers and sisters, which I can't blame her for. I'm not necessarily in favor of sanctuary cities. I just don't. I do think that to a certain extent we should follow the law when it comes to making sure that people don't come here illegally. But I also do believe that we should do what we can to make sure that we are deporting the right people back, and making sure that we give people opportunities who are doing well in this country and who are, contributing to this country. We should put in some sort of, law where they can become citizens. So, but anyway, good on her for that. And she also talks about his stance against Thurgood Marshall, who was the first the first black Supreme Court justice. And in a kind of like an interrogation type thing by the Senate and by the Republicans, when Elena Kagan was being nominated for that position in the Supreme Court, they attacked her relationship with Thurgood Marshall, basically saying that he was against the original Constitution. But really, he was against the original intent, which supported slavery and which supported gender and racial discrimination. So they took that to say that, and this is what John Cornyn said. John Cornyn calls him an activist. And they always use that as like a derogatory term. Oh, he's an activist because he didn't believe in discrimination? Okay. So why do they keep bringing in these ultra conservatives, right? I mean, you have a lot of people in the Senate, Republicans like Marco Rubio. You got Republicans like Rand Paul, Lindsey Graham, and check this, Tim Scott, who was the first black senator from South Carolina. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but why not bring him? Why not bring him to a black college? And he's much more moderate in his views, and he's much more understanding of different sides. And he's much more willing to work with all different sides. So there's this whole thing that they come to these commencement speeches and they're like, oh, we need to learn how to work with the other side. We need to learn how to be graceful. None of these people that they keep bringing in are graceful. They're so polarizing. So why not bring in some of these moderate people, right? And this is not to be bashing the GOP, but it's people who just don't respect our history. You know, it's people who don't even want to respect our history, don't even want to look into our history or where we come from or our contributions. So there's a limit to how much we're supposed to let people, discuss, with people from different points of view. When there are people who want to see your demise and who support a system that wants to see your demise and they don't give a fuck about what you have to say, there's a point where we have to stop reaching across the aisle to continually be slapped in the face. So I say, good on these students to say, you know what, fuck it. This is not about being, a safe space. This is about, there comes a point where these people don't want to see you succeed. So why bring them on your campus on your day? Now, there's this last point I want to make about there's these people who, all of a sudden now they want to take away federal funds from HBCUs. Well, all of a sudden you want to get involved in black colleges and black issues, but when we're being shot in the street by cops, when we don't see justice in the justice system, when the urban housing and the public schooling systems are failing, and when the food in these when the food that comes from these public schools is basically poisoning our children, you don't give a fuck. But all of a sudden, when these schools stand up for themselves, first off, this is a private school anyway. But when these schools stand up for themselves, all of a sudden now you want to take away. It's this perception, man, that some of these white people, I'm talking about these white people that are talking about taking away federal funds, don't give a fuck about any other black issue. But then when black people stand up for themselves, they want to jump in and say, oh, let's take this away, as if to play some sort of godlike figure, right? Well, fuck them and fuck you. So I'm going to leave that there. Thanks for taking the time out to listen to me. And as always, stay woke, my friends.